Hello and welcome to Lexitecture, a podcast about word origins and histories. My name is Ryan, and in each episode my friend Amy and I bring a new pair of words to share their stories with each other and you. You can find our past episodes and the occasional blog post on our website at lexitecture.com. Follow along with us on Twitter and Facebook at Lexitecture, and if you really like what we do, you can support the show at patreon.com/lexitecture. Today's episode, Listener Wordstravaganza Volume 5. Alright, so it's just me this time around again. Amy was feeling under the weather when we got our chance to otherwise arrange the schedules to record, so that wasn't a possibility. As a side note, I wonder if Bunny Trails has done under the weather as a phrase. Never actually thought about it before, just saying it now. But, be interesting to look into that. Anyway, so since I'm on my own, I thought I would dip into the bag of word suggestions we got from the listeners, our listeners on social media back in the summertime when we asked, and see what comes out of that bag of words. So our first one was asked by Chase on Facebook, who was asking about the word manicure, and specifically whether it's related to cure, or if that's just a coincidence. And the answer is yes. Now, if you want a more in-depth look at cure, you can listen back to episode 99, Apothecary Curator, because cure plays into that fairly heavily. But as a very, very truncated explanation of that, cure once simply meant to care for. And so a manicure is caring for your hands, from the Latin word for hand, manus, M-A-N-U-S. So that same word that gives us stuff like manual, like manual labor, work with your hands, that kind of thing. Janet Greer sent an email to ask about the word care, which at first blush seems to fit very nicely with manicure, except it doesn't at all. Which is, well, maybe not at all, but not as much as you might think at first. So what are you talking about? Well, what I'm talking about is, although the earliest form of cure came from Latin and meant to care for, the word care isn't related to that at all, and doesn't even come from the Latin side of the English family. It comes from Germanic. So it was Old English, German before that, and Proto-Germanic way back in the mists of time, from a root that meant lament. The noun care, when it first shows up in English, meant like worry, anxiety, sorrow, grief, that kind of thing. And the verb to care meant just to sort of experience those things. And that's back, first millennium type of time frame. And it's not until a couple hundred years later, sort of earliest kind of mid 1200s, that it morphs into the phrase, it morphs into the meaning that we know now. It's thought to come from a Pi root that meant to cry out, call, or scream. And the idea is that those are things you do when you're in great distress because of sorrow or grief or fear or any of the things that care originally meant. And that's kind of how that went from the Pi root to that Proto-Germanic and early Old English sense. And then I guess it's one of those where the words tend to kind of get their meanings diluted and watered down a little bit. In this case, because it goes from being a very extreme sense to just sort of to care for something is, I guess there's something there when you care for something, you do have at least the potential for sort of anxiety and worry. If you lose something you care about, there's definitely a possibility for quite strong grief there as well. So you can kind of see how it would get there through sort of a softening over the centuries. Incidentally, care is also part of one of the big pedants, bugbears, the phrase "couldn't care less" versus the "I could care less" thing that makes a certain segment of the population sort of get all twitchy. But interestingly, and I guess it shouldn't be surprising, because so many of the things that we consider kind of errors in English are actually very, very old. And people complain about them, kids today. But it's really been kids forever, and indeed people forever, because the phrase "I couldn't care less" shows up in the OED in 1946, and a mere 9 years later, we get the phrase "I could care less," meaning the same thing, like holding the same meaning. And Edam Online has a very nice way of kind of characterizing the "I could care less" phrase, whereas a lot of people are like, well, it's just people being dumb and that's the wrong use. And it was automatically, less than 10 years later, people were screwing it up and using it wrong. But the way Edam Online phrases it just talks about the phrase "I could care less" as having an understood negative. Like people know what you mean. So, the negative can be understood. Lots of things go unsaid. Why not that? Next up, we had a question from a Twitter user at SmithsK, and they asked about the word pink, and specifically like when it came into English as a color, and what the story is there. And I think like a bunch of other colors, it seems to be that, like specifically orange, there's that question of, was the fruit named after the color or the other way around? And it was the other way around. The fruit came first, and then the color was things that are like that. And violet was the same way, and pink is the same way. So pink does in fact come from a thing that was pink, and then all things that were that color were called pink because of it. And pink was the name of a flower in the genus Dianthus. I don't know anything about plants, but the Plant Anthropology podcast people, if they're out there listening or someone could tag them, they could probably tell you loads more about the flower pink and the genus Dianthus. But it shows up in the OED as the name of this flower, or I guess a whole group of flowers, in 1566. And it's not until 1669 that it is transmogrified into just the color. So things that are resembling the color of the flower are called pink by 1669. Going back to the flower, nobody's really sure why it's called that, or what the word pink originally meant, or how it got to be where it is. There's a couple of different theories. It seems the Dutch feature heavily in this. And one of the theories is that it comes from the adjective pink, which is older than either the flower or the color, and it means of an eye, winking, or half shut. Now this is interesting to me because the OED points to this as being the reason why conjunctivitis, or the gross eye thing commonly called pink eye, is called that. It's not because of the color your eyes turn when you get it. It's because of this winking and half shut thing where your eyes kind of get stuck shut, or it's hard to open them and stuff. And that's why, because a pink eye was a winking or half closed eye. So pink eye is called that because of that. Nothing to do with the color. That's one theory for how pink, the flower, got its name. And I'm not sure, maybe there's something about the flower that looks like that. I should have looked up a picture of the flower. I didn't. So that's one theory. The other theory is that it comes from the verb to pink. And you think like pinking shears is the only thing I can think of that to sort of give a concrete example of this. But it meant originally to decorate the edges of something, usually like a cloth, a tapestry, or a bit of linen or whatever, by cutting patterns or fancy edges into it. And the idea here is that the petals of those flowers have jagged edges, and it makes them look like they've been pinked. So a pink was that flower. That flower was a color that eventually took the name of the flower and became known as pink. Finally, this quick little rundown of words, we have longtime listener Anne Young asked on Facebook about the word endeavour. And Endeavour is neat. Endeavour, just either a noun meaning sort of the effort made to attain some sort of goal, or a verb meaning, I guess, just meaning to try. There's probably a subtle difference between an attempt and an endeavour, or to try or to endeavour something. Maybe endeavour involves a little more work. So like rather than to try, like work towards something or exert effort in pursuit of something. But I'm not sure. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, now we all know, I guess, what the word means. We can look at where it comes from. This is a cool word. It's in the same class of words as opportunity, for those who were listening to that episode way back when. It's not all that long ago, but seems like forever ago, because time doesn't matter in the plague apocalypse. But like opportunity, this is a word that comes from a phrase. And in this case, a French phrase that is used as an example here is se mettre en devoir de faire quelque chose, which means to make it one's duty to do something. And so I don't know, like it says it comes from this phrase. I don't know if this phrase was super common, if this is something that just rolled off the tongue. I have no idea, because I am not, nor have I ever been, a 13th century or 14th century Frenchman. But that se mettre en devoir, that en devoir is where we get endeavour. And it was originally, the earliest citations have it in two words. So to put yourself in devoir, to do something, is to sort of take upon yourself the onus and obligation to do a thing. And then it became shortened and became sort of slammed together over the centuries to become one word where you, and I mean, maybe that's where the subtle distinction between just trying something and endeavoring to do something is. There's sort of maybe a heavier obligation. I don't know if that's still there. Someone can let me know. We'll do maybe a Twitter poll or something later. But if you are listening to this and you're like, oh, wait, I have a very strong opinion of this, please let us know. Me. I say us. Right now it's me, but I'll show Amy too, so that's good. But yeah, so whether there's a difference between try and endeavor, I'm not sure, but that's where endeavor comes from. En devoir. So the French kicking stuff into us as well. And yeah, but short episode this time. If you prefer our episodes shorter, you're welcome. If you wish I had gone on longer, I'm sorry. Just cut out whichever one of those applies to you, and we'll all have a better day. But yeah, we left this. I left this pretty late, and then Amy was unavailable, so we're dipping into the bag of fun, and that's where we come to this week. So thank you to all listeners who submitted stuff back in, I think it was June. Obviously, I still have the list. Still go through it and mine it for nuggets of awesome wordiness. So I appreciate all those people, and I also appreciate everyone who's just occasionally just drops us a line with a word. It's like, hey, what do you think of this one? Did you ever look into this? Or this might be a fun one to do, because I definitely get all those. We read them, we enjoy them, they provide fodder for our brains. If we haven't got to it yet, it's almost certainly that we haven't got to it yet. Not that we're just not going to get to it, because I do add these all to a big list. So please keep them coming. And thank you very much for listening. And we'll see you again in a couple of weeks with a regular episode. Fingers and toes crossed. And we'll be back on track. Talk to you later. Bye. And that's it for another episode of Lexitecture. To get in touch with us about something you heard in this episode, you can email us at words@lexitecture.com. You can also follow along and talk to us at Lexitecture on Facebook and Twitter, and at Lexitecture Podcast on Instagram. For back episodes and the occasional blog post, visit us at Lexitecture.com. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.